Keep blocking them out. We don't want to see them at this time. Good morning, everyone. Well, we do want to see Kim Baer, attorney at law, and we want to talk about something. We like to talk about things that are topical in the news or that time of year and remind people to do some certain things, and this is definitely one of those times.
Yes, yes. We're coming up on the holidays. We've got Valentine's Day right around the corner. So I thought this morning we'd talk about prenuptial agreements.
Now, that will ruin any relationship, won't it? I want this person to marry me,
Well,
Kim.
apparently it ruined Mariah Carey and James Packer's relationship because they said they had the craziest potential prenup agreements that's ever been placed. And when you read about it, it does seem a little out of hand.
Over the top.
Over the top. Like
yes.
if he ever gave her a present that was over $250,000 and he didn't say it was a gift in a card, he could therefore take it back in case they ever got divorced because he didn't declare it a gift.
Everything has to be specified.
And it's like, that's a little...
Right, that's a little overreaching.
Yeah.
A little extreme.
I agree.
I mean, that's not a typical, like if I ever gave anybody a $250,000 gift, whoo, put me in the loony bin. But that's on the extreme side of things, but yet people need to be doing prenups to make sure they're safe in case something does happen.
Right, right. And you know, there's two common misconceptions, I think, when I meet with people or if they ask me about a prenup. Number one, people assume that you need to be rich and that it really only is something that people who have a lot of assets would want.
To protect, yeah.
To protect, and that's not necessarily true. And then number two, people also assume, for one example would be, Lou, if you and I got married and I already have my law business, and so I'm going to assume, hey, I had my law business before I married Lou, so if we got divorced 10 years from now, it's mine, you know? And that's not necessarily true either. So, and the same thing if you own a house, if you've got a 401k, if you inherit money during the marriage. And the reason for that is that the Iowa courts have the right or the power to equitably divide any property, not just marital property. And
because that's state law.
Because it's state law. And
yeah,
so
a lot of people don't think that's the case.
they don't think that's the case, and that's the reason why most people say, oh, you know, if we got married and we got divorced, I'd take what's mine, you'd take
what's yours,
what's
and you go.
Yeah, and whatever we earned during the marriage would be divided, but that's not it's just not true. And so what I typically tell people is if you own a business, if you have some money in a 401k that's a substantial amount, you know, 10, 20, you know, thousand, something more than that, if you own a house, if you think you're going to inherit, you know, we have a lot of farmland in Iowa,
That's
and
true.
so if you think you're going to inherit farmland or you think you're going to inherit a substantial amount of money from your parents, you really need to stop and think about a prenup.
What would you say in that case? Say it's a farmland situation and you realize that potentially in the next 10 years or so you are going to inherit that. How would you put that into a prenup? Would you say that this land will be mine?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
That's it?
Yeah, and sometimes I have people come in who say, you know, because they're concerned, you know, if you and I were engaged and then I start talking to you about a prenup, sometimes there's some pushback on that. Oh, you don't really love me. You don't think we'll be married forever.
Do you have a way of breaking the ice on something like that as someone who's an expert in dealing with that?
Absolutely. So what I tell people is, number one, let's narrowly tailor it. So if the concern really is the house or farmland, let's just limit the prenup to that. Now, certainly, if you and I were getting married and I have a farm that's been in my family for 5 or 6 years, I could come to you and say, hey, my family, they think you're the best thing since sliced bread, but they want to make sure that I protect the farm. And I know that if you and I got divorced, you'd never make a claim against the farm. But let's just put it in writing. The other thing I tell people is make me the bad guy or make your attorney the bad guy. Just say, look, my attorney will kill me if I don't get something in writing. And I think if you narrowly tailor it, then it's not such a hard pill for people to swallow.
Because a lot of times they think if you say
sense.
prenup, you're instantly thinking there's going to be an end to the marriage. And that's not necessarily the case. We just know life happens and you want to protect your assets.
It does, it does. And
so you're covering your assets.
So you're covering your assets. Another thing that we need to clarify, because I've had some of these cases come up where somebody didn't do a prenup when they got married, and then, you know, into the marriage, the parties are talking about, well, you know, this is your business. I would never make a claim on your business. Well, great. Let's put that in writing. You need to know that a post-nuptial agreement is not necessarily enforceable. enforceable in Iowa.
I was going to ask you about
Yeah.
that, but is it possible to get one, though?
Yeah, you can get one, and the court will look at it, but it's one factor out of many when the court's dividing property.
Why would that not stand up in court?
Because in Iowa, we just don't enforce them. We don't. The law only provides for a prenuptial agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing about a prenuptial agreement, it has to be signed within 6 weeks of the marriage. So 6 weeks before you get married.
6 weeks prior?
6 weeks prior. So it could from 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks. So any time from 6 weeks until the date of the marriage. So, and the reason for that is because we also have to have full disclosure of assets and debts. And so the courts want to make sure that let's say you and I got engaged today, but we don't get married until next December. Well, what I own and what I owe and what you own and what you owe could change substantially.
So the window is 6 weeks and sooner to the day of the marriage.
Sooner, yes. So
not 6 weeks and back.
Exactly.
So 6 weeks and sooner to the marriage.
Exactly. So if you're getting married the end of June, you can sign a prenup anytime from the middle of May until the
It's
day
almost like
before.
open enrollment for people that are involved in that now. You have from from when they opened it until boom when they shut it down. So you need it in that window.
Yeah, in that window. And so what I tell people is if you're engaged and there's something you're worried about, go and talk to an attorney. Prenups aren't very expensive. I think most attorneys will charge a flat fee. I know in our office, I think our flat fee starts at $750 for a prenuptial agreement. And there may be things like, going back to our example, maybe I've got farmland. Well, you've got your racing business. So there might be things you want to protect and I want to protect.
Right.
And we put
Is that two separate ones or is that all
just
one?
one.
Okay.
All one agreement.
That's all part of the same document.
All part of the same document.
Okay.
And we can provide in there what's going to happen to the things that we earn during the marriage. So
I know it depends on the depth of the prenup, but what's the average time that it would take to put one of these together?
Oh, just a couple of days. It's and then it depends on. So if you and I were doing one, and you had an attorney, then obviously there's going to be some negotiation going back and forth because your attorney might want to mark something up, and you've got to put together the list of your debts.
Would kids go into something like that, or is that a completely separate document?
That's an excellent question, Jackie. So a prenup cannot govern custody, it cannot govern child support, and it can't govern alimony. So it can govern everything else, but the court reserves that jurisdiction, and so you and I could agree that if we got married, you wouldn't pay me any alimony, and I wouldn't pay you any alimony if we got divorced, but the court's not bound by that.
Okay. There you go. Now, people
Great
have any
information.
questions about this, really, it's something you should really do. And if you have any other questions, Kim Baer has all the answers. The best phone number to get a hold of you, Kim?
Sure, it's 515-INJURED or 279-2000.
There it is. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys, too.
We will be right back at 7:49 right now, and we have a bunch of rock news to give to you coming up next on CW Iowa Live.